4.2. Today we're doing notes on 4.2. People, time to be quiet. Hunter, I've started. You're still talking. A for loop has 3 parts. We're going to do bullets. So for loop has 3 parts. The initialization statement, Boolean expression, and the increment statement. And what happens is the initialization runs before anything happens. The Boolean expression is evaluated each time before you run the block of code. And the increment statement runs after the block of code. So we'll do an example. So in this one, this int I equals 0, that's the initialization statement. That's creating a variable, setting it. This is our control variable, if you want to call it something. That's the variable that's going to decide how long you're in this for loop, what's going on. The truth is you don't even have to use that variable inside the for loop. But that's what's going to decide how long we're in the loop. Then we have a Boolean statement, in this case I less than 5, and that's telling the for loop you're going to run this loop as long as I is less than 5. And then finally you have an increment statement. In this case this is I++, which just means add 1 to I every time through the loop. And then we have a block of code. So I guess technically we have 4 parts. A block of code being the 4th part. Yeah, sorry. There's 4 parts if you count the block of code. I'll be back here in a sec, but I want to show you, we're going to run this for loop that I wrote. Put it in here, make it look pretty. Let's see, it should be a semicolon, not a colon. So here's the for loop that I just gave you guys. And when we run it, we should get 0, 1, 2, 3, 4 all on a little line. Oh, I did println. I meant to do print. So it'd be on one line so it's easier to see. And if I wanted to go 1 through 10, I could start at 1 and I could say keep going as long as it's less than 11. And we'd have the numbers 1 through 10.
Can you select out of that to print like only evens?
Yeah, well you could say I plus equals 2. That'll give you every other one, but not evens. But if you wanted only evens, you could start at 2 and say I want it to be less than 13. And then we get 2 through 12. Yeah, I mean you could do all kinds of things. You also could, inside here, put an if statement that said if it's even, print it, you know. But if you're already in a for loop, you could. It seems like that would be silly. So, right here, everybody, this was semicolon, not a colon. I didn't mean to, that was just a typo.
So will it print I 5 times, or will it wait till it's finished at 6 seconds?
It prints, the code I gave you originally prints I 5 times. Right here. Here's the original code. But what I said before, it doesn't even need I inside here. I could print hello, and it prints hello 5 times. So what's different between this and a while loop? remember in a while loop, you had to have a statement inside the while loop that changed your variable. Otherwise, you'd have an infinite loop. And here, you don't need anything inside changing the variable. In fact, you don't want to be changing the variable inside. You don't want to say I++ here because it's already taken care of right up here. So we don't want to do that. That just starts to, I don't even know what happens. Yeah, I don't want to try it out right now. You try it out, and then you tell me what happens. It'll be awesome. No, I think I've seen it. It happens, but it's just you don't need to do that. You already have something that's changing I every time. So if you want to do it by hand, do a while loop. If you want to use a for loop, use a for loop. But don't do both. Yeah.
So then when would you recommend using a while or
We'll talk about that. I got a couple points to make. Points. If the Boolean expression is false to begin with, it won't run the block of code even once. Oh, perfect. I'll get this to all fit. So here's some important points. If the Boolean expression is false to begin with, it won't even go in and it doesn't run the block of code even once. Next, the way it works is it sets up the initialization, just does that once, checks the Boolean expression. If it's true, it runs the block of code. Then after it runs a block of code, it does the increment statement, and then it reevaluates the Boolean. So that's the loop. It'll if the Boolean's still true, runs the block again, does the increment statement. Is the Boolean still true? Great. Run the block of code, run the increment statement, and that's the loop. If you only have one line inside the for loop, you don't need the braces. It's just like a while loop or an if statement. You don't need the braces if you just have one line. It's good habit to just probably always use the braces, but if you really know what you're doing and you know you only have one line, the problem is you have one line and then later you want to add a second line. Sometimes people click on that one line, hit enter, add their second line, and then it's not actually in the loop because they forgot to put braces around it. And then the increment statement can be a decrement statement, meaning it doesn't have to only be going up, it can be going down as well. So I'll show you if we do this. I starts at 0, I is less than 5. This is gonna, this would be bad. I think it'll run forever. Yeah, I mean, it's still printing, but we can't. It's kind of fun. Anyway, we'll end it. Because notice this, that didn't make any sense. This is start at 0, we're gonna go downwards, and we're going to go as long as it's less than 5. That doesn't make any sense. But let's start at 10, and let's say as long as it's greater than 5. So this should be a little better. We'll have 10, 9, 8, 7, 6. And by the way, if you want it to be including the 5, you could, say less than, greater than or equal to 5. There's more than one way to get it to do that. You could have changed it to a 4. It's very flexible. Okay, so Alicia asked, when would you use a while loop versus a for loop? Any for loop can be written as a while loop, and any while loop can be written as a for loop. I would say this. A while loop is better when you don't know how many times you're going to have to loop. So you remember how I had you do that number program where you were going to enter numbers and average them? This was on Friday until you entered a 0 and then you bailed out. That is better as a while loop because it didn't say enter 3 numbers, we're going to average them. It said enter numbers until you don't want to anymore and then enter 0. So that was perfect for a while loop. You could have done it with a for loop if you just chose a really big number, like set up the for loop to run a 10,000 times. And you're like, I know they're not going to enter 10,000 numbers. And then you could still just break when they entered a 0. But if you don't know how many times you want to repeat something, a while loop is usually better. And if you know how many times you want to repeat something, then a for loop is probably better. Like if I say print out the times tables from 1 to 10 in a little double table thing, you would have one for loop that went from 1 to 10 and another one that went from 1 to 10. I mean, that's pretty obvious. And they multiply each other, and it's a perfect little times table universe. So let's rewrite this as a while loop, just to have done it. So you can try in your notes if you want. But this thing prints out 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5. I'm just going to write it here so we have it as a reference. So if we wanted to print that as a while loop, we could say you have to set up your control variable separately. I can't use I, so I'll use x. Int x equals 0. Oh, actually, I could use I. It doesn't matter here. Not 0. 10. While x greater than 4, I'm going to say. And then, except it's not x. I'm just getting all confused. Do I have that on the clipboard? F2. I need one more thing. What do I need? Yeah, we need the increment or decrement. So this ought to work. Let's see. Oh yeah. I'll put a blank line right here so we can see them next to each other. Yeah, so there we go. We got it done with a for loop. We got it done with a while loop. I mean, if you know you want to go from 10 to 5, counting down one by one, I think a for loop's easier. You know, you just have that line, and then you're doing stuff. Over here, you got to set up the variable, and then you got to decrement. I mean, 6 of one, half a dozen of another. Questions? Okay, this brings us to another issue. Scope. The block, I'll write this down. The block of code I can't talk and type at the same time. The block of code where a variable is declared is its scope. And a variable is only valid in its current scope. And you may have run into this, you probably haven't. We haven't been writing really complicated programs, but this will come up now that we have these for loops. Because that variable, if you declare a variable like that int I in that for loop, it's not actually available later. So watch this. If I try to print I right here, I'm going to just delete the rest of my code here. So you'd say, okay, int I, and I'm printing I, and then after the for loop, I'm trying to print I. Watch what happens when I try to compile this. Well, for one, I deleted one too many things, if not two too many things. Let's see if that's right. I think that's right now. Okay, it says line 13 right here, can't find symbol I. And you're like, what do you mean can't find symbol I? It's right here, int I equals 10. Well, here's the deal. That I variable only exists inside of this for loop. And afterwards, when I try to print it, the compiler won't even let me compile. I could write here, say string best teacher ever equals Hayes. That's what I'm talking about. And then down here I say print best teacher ever. And it's going to also complain about that because it only exists inside. Let me get rid of the I here, and you'll see it'll complain about best teacher ever. Can't find symbol. Yeah, I don't exist. I only exist as the best teacher inside that for loop. Best teacher ever in the for loop. I could have added, but anyway.
Are you saying that we're in for loop as we speak?
Anything you create inside that for loop. I don't think we're in a for loop. There's a lot more. We got a lot more free will than Java. So here's the thing. If you declare the variable, what I mean by declare, we've got the word int right here. Well, first of all, if you don't declare that, when I try to run it, it's going to say, I don't know about what I is. You haven't told me what I is. Okay, so we're saying fine. I'm going to say int I right here, and then our for loop is going to be fine now. Everything's great. If you needed to be able to access that variable outside the for loop, you could create it ahead of time. You could say int I right there, and then you can't declare it here, and then we could print it down here. I mean, I'm just explaining. So in this case, the scope of the variable I is from here to here. All this, because I declare it here. Here I'm making it equal to 10, so then I could print it down here. I'm just printing it on its own line. This will work fine. So we did the loop. Hey, then check it out. I is actually 4 when the thing's over with, because this decrement function actually ran, and then it was no longer greater than or equal to 5. But when we printed it down at the bottom, it was a 4. Anyway, scope isn't just for for loops. It's in if statements, while loops. It's all through Java. We just haven't had to deal with it really because we've been writing programs that were just in a single scope. So we didn't need to worry about why is this variable not working in this other place. All right, that's all I had for today's notes. Any questions? Yes?
Could you go back to the scope?
Yeah.